When Alien was released in 1979, it almost single-handedly created the subgenre of sci-fi horror. Met with universal critical and commercial acclaim, the question on everyone's minds was, how do you build on one of the best films ever made? This was a question posed and indeed tackled head-on by emerging director James Cameron, fresh off of directing the first Terminator film. While pitching the concept of aliens to potential investors, Cameron strode wordlessly towards a whiteboard and wrote the word aliens on it before ingeniously putting a $sign through the S. He landed the gig immediately. Although the film was enormously successful, it was not a cakewalk to get it made. At times, it could have been game over, man. Hey, you get it? Yeah, you get it. My name is Adam Cleary, and these are 20 things you didn't know about aliens. Number 20, we only got Doom because of aliens. See, Aliens is such an influential film that it has inspired a host of games as well as movies since its release. Initially, ID was signed on to create a video game adaptation of the film. However, this idea was scrapped in favour of releasing their own game, giving them the creative freedom they actually craved. As a result, they developed a certain game called Doom, and the rest is history. Now, in retrospect, Doom does have several aesthetic similarities with the Aliens universe, as well as the fast-paced action and seemingly unending hordes of horrors. In 1994, Doom was modded into an Aliens game called Aliens TC, which very much feels like the game Doom could have been. Number 19, the film was nominated for 7 Academy Awards. Perhaps it's common knowledge now, but it's worth a reminder of what a critical and commercial success the film actually was. It was nominated for 7 Academy Awards and won 2 for Best Visual Effects and Best Sound Editing. But it was also nominated for Best Sound Mixing, Best Production Design, Best Original Music Score, Best Film Editing, and Best Actress for Sigourney Weaver. And who beat her to it? Well, of course, it was Marlee Matlin for the film Children of a Lesser God. No, me neither. Number 18, not all fans were happy with the film. Yeah, fans were perhaps more critical of the film than expected upon its release. One of their major gripes was that the aliens had lost their menace from the first film and were now so numerous they became purely cannon fodder. Responding to this criticism, Cameron argued that the aliens had simply just adapted to their situation. They knew the Marines had overwhelming firepower and instead used their strength in numbers to probe for weaknesses and pick them off one by one. See, still perfect killing machine, it all checks out. Number 17, the comic follow-up was retconned due to Alien 3. In 1988, Dark Horse Comics worked on a number of titles that acted as a continuation of Aliens, further exploring the universe and the fate of its surviving characters. They featured a number of original characters from the film, including Ripley, Newt, and Hicks, and set up a grim premise. Newt ends up in a mental institution and the world gets overrun with xenomorphs. The release of the sequel Alien 3 provided the comic giants with a problem though, in that the movie opens by killing off both Newt and Hicks, thus tearing an enormous hole in the comic's continuity. Rather than admit defeat, Dark Horse went back and edited the series, renaming primary characters and making Ripley a synth, effectively retconning the entire continuity, actually, by doing that. Oh well. Number 16, Carrie Henn never acted again. Whilst many know that Carrie Henn's turn as Newt would be her last, many don't know what she went on to do afterwards. You see, aside from starring in a couple of documentaries about the film itself, Aliens would be her first and last movie. She subsequently stated that the main reason for shunning Hollywood was that she didn't want to be separated from her family. There were also claims that other children at her school were very jealous of her success, meaning she found it incredibly difficult to make friends. But all's well that ends well though, she's now a teacher in California and does make the occasional convention appearance. Number 15, it shares the same universe as Tim Burton's Batman. Alright, you caught me out, that one's not actually at all true, but there is nonetheless still some DNA shared between Aliens and the Batman film that came out 3 years later. You see, James Cameron filmed the Hive sequences in an abandoned power station called Acton Lane in northwest London, which possessed the requisite atmosphere and menace he wanted for the film. Now, much of that set was left abandoned, meaning that parts of the Hive were still present when Burton's team came on to film Batman. It was used for the scene of the interior of Axis Chemicals, the place where the Joker famously falls into a vat of acid. Number 14, the music was composed in just 2 weeks. The chaos of the film shoot was not just relegated to the set, it's worth pointing out. Cameron hired James Horner to compose the soundtrack for the film, and, well, that was a laugh riot too. Horner came on set thinking that the film was almost complete, only to find that Cameron was still editing the thing, therefore making many of Horner's compositions totally redundant as the musical cues would have to change. Horner then had just 2 weeks to compose the soundtrack after he was originally promised he would have 6, and had to use snippets from the original Alien movie just to paper over the cracks. Horner and Cameron's relationship was so fraught on set that the next time they could face working together was on Titanic in 1997, nearly a decade later. Number 13, there were no special effects used for the Queen. Nope, not a single one. It was shot with little to no computer-aided trickery, and essentially, the Queen alien was just a glorified puppet. She was created with bin bags, operated by a crew, and hoisted on a crane. The action regularly fitted between this full-scale model and a 3-foot tall one, which would have been horrendously difficult to shoot in order to maintain the scale of the fight. It's worth noting, of course, that in future installments, the Queen was heavily CGI'd, and, well, look, it was crap. Number 12, Corporal Hicks was originally portrayed by another actor. Yes, now Corporal Hicks is one of the most iconic characters in the film, with Michael Bean? I've never said that out loud before. With Mickey B putting in a career best performance. Interestingly though, he was not Cameron's number one choice. Hicks was originally set to be portrayed by James Remar, an actor probably best known for playing Ajax in The Warriors. The actors who played the Marines were given military training, whereupon Remar allegedly discharged a live shotgun into a wall. He was also found to be in possession of drugs, and he was swiftly fired. Technically speaking, he does still star in the film though. The shot where the Marines first arrive in the hive was filmed before he was fired, so was edited to cut away just before you see his face. Number 11, facehuggers were inspired by flying piranhas. Piranha 2, The Spawning, will not go down as a cinematic masterpiece, although it has become something of a cult classic in recent years. It is most notable for being James Cameron's directorial debut. It showcased his ability to make a tight budget go a long way, something reflected in his next film, The Terminator. You know, the film that would ultimately land Cameron the aliens gig. But the mechanisms used to make the piranhas fly were then reused for the facehuggers in Alien, in the part where they're flapping around in the test tubes, and, well, I mean, it worked because those facehuggers moving in an uncanny way solidifies them as perhaps the scariest of all the alien/xenomorph breeds. Number 10, the knife scene was kept a secret from Bill Paxton. I love this one. Originally, Lance Henriksen, who played Bishop, was to stab a knife between his own fingers as a show of skill and dexterity. Henriksen, though, suggested to Cameron to put Bill's hand on top of his while doing the scene. Cameron agreed and told the rest of the crew this was going to happen, but neglected to tell Paxton. So the terrified reaction he has in the film, that is 100% genuine, and why the scene works on so many levels. It displays Bishop's potential as an android and Hudson's macho personality just being a front when he's faced with a terrifying situation. Number 9, there was nearly a mass walkout. Yeah, so tensions on set culminated with Cameron firing his first assistant director, Derek Cracknell. The two were having a power struggle on who was actually directing the film, with Cracknell frequently disobeying Cameron's instructions. Once Cracknell was fired, he urged the rest of the crew to down tools and walk out with him. After hours of negotiation, the crew eventually agreed to support Cameron with filming if he was more respectful of their break times. Cameron told the crew at the end of shooting that he was motivated by the knowledge that one day he would drive out the gate of Pinewood and never come back, and that you sorry bastards would still be here. Number 8, there were other tensions on set too. It's not a secret that James Cameron was and still is one of Hollywood's most demanding directors, and the crew for Aliens was considerably different to what he was used to working with. He preferred to have a young and enthusiastic group who would all pull together to get the film over the line. But this bunch, however, were, according to him anyway, apparently more dedicated to taking their tea breaks. He recounts this tale, and I won't attempt the voice: in the middle of filming a scene, the giant stage doors swung open, letting the special effects smoke spill out. Also, the crew could rush the tea lady with her urn of hot water and plate of cheese rolls. Actually sounds quite delicious. Number 7, the Marines personalized their own body armor. In keeping with the Vietnam War look of the film, as well as the general look of the armor itself, the actors playing the Marines were encouraged to personalize all of their body armor. The actress who plays Corporal Dietrich, one of the Marines who was killed early on, has the words Blue Angel dubbed on the back of her helmet. This is, and of course you know this, a reference to the film De Blauwe Angel, starring of all people, Marlene Dietrich. Bill Paxton has the word Louise inscribed on his armour, which is just a reference to his wife Louise Newbury. Number 6, there were only 6 hypersleep chambers for 12 characters. This is a good one as well. The more grandiose scale of Aliens compared to its predecessor inevitably meant bigger sets and more elaborate designs, which even more inevitably led to bigger budgets. Then, of course, even more inevitably than that, led to budget constraints. This became a problem, though, when planning the Awakening from Hypersleep sequence. The budget could only afford 6 chambers, but there was a crew of 12 that needed to be shown emerging from them. What you see in the film is actually just a mirror, and it is shot in such a way that it looks like there is double the amount of chambers than there really is. See, count them here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they're all real, and everything past there is just their reflection. Number 5, HR Giga wasn't even needed. Now, just on the off chance you've been living in a cave on Mars with your eyes shut and your fingers in your ears going la 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 la, no awesome pop culture references for me please, HR Giga was of course the visual mastermind behind the first film. But for whatever reason, Cameron decided not to use him at all for the sequel. In a letter he addressed to Giga, Cameron explained that he had to put his own unique stamp on the project, and he felt that bringing Giga on board, such was his influence, would just make Aliens Giga's film. Which I mean is fair enough, because the first film absolutely was. The assets and lore had already been set up in that film though, and were used as a visual aid to create the sequel. He was, it is said, extremely disappointed. Number 4, Sigourney Weaver didn't want to do a sequel. Yes, well, of course, Sigourney Weaver became a breakout star from the first film and showcased her talents as a major female icon in modern popular culture. Originally, though, she didn't want to reprise the role for a sequel. She was fearful that it would distill the impact her character had made in the original and was nervous about what direction the film would go. This changed, of course, when Cameron came on board. Weaver read his script and saw that strides had been made to further develop her character. The thing that sold her on it most of all, of course, was being able to develop a motherly bond with Newt. Number 3, originally Amanda Ripley was still alive. Now, Aliens originally had an extended and far more visceral scene featuring the mother and daughter relationship between the Ripleys. Originally, just after Ellen is rescued, she has a call with Amanda, who has now reached old age and is bitter that her mother never came back despite her promise. She tells her that she hates her for abandoning her and never speaks to her again. Rather harsh, really, as she's been floating through space for 50 years, but there we go. What we actually get instead is Ripley simply being told that her daughter died while she was in hypersleep. But of course, fan interest in Amanda's story did lead to the creation of Alien Isolation, one of the best horror video games of all time, and we're gonna use that footage. Yep, there's me being absolutely terrified while playing it blindfolded. Thanks for that. Number 2, Aliens could have ended up being Prometheus. In the planning stages of an Alien sequel, there was talk of making it without Sigourney Weaver. Other avenues were explored, such as answering what happened to the space jockey from the first Alien film. Yep, that's this guy. This was one of cinema's longest running Easter eggs and unsolved mysteries, as fans had so many theories about who or what it was and how on earth it got there. Which is of course sort of the premise of Prometheus, even if it doesn't really deal with what happened to this particular jockey from the first Alien film. Technically, that has still never been answered. Number 1, the film was originally called Alien 2. In 1986, Cameron co-wrote a script for the sequel to Alien, having secured the role of director. The film was tentatively called Alien 2, much to the delight of those who like all their sequels to be named numerically and sequentially. Although this version of the script was extremely light on dialogue, remarkably much of the story is actually very similar to the opening of this film. There were of course some notable changes in that version though, the most noteworthy of which being that Weyland-Yutani just no longer existed, removing the evil corporation element from the film entirely. Now that doesn't feel like a major issue for Aliens, but without a big bad to rally this film around, its absence could have really taken the subsequent franchise on a very different path.